Welcome back to the Bearded Console Gamer, and today I'm going to be taking you through 7 reasons why you need to play open world survival horror game Days Gone on your PS5 right this second. But just in case you missed it when it first came out, Days Gone follows the story of badass motorcycle enthusiast Deacon St. John as he attempts to survive the mutant-infested wasteland of post-apocalyptic America and also find out the grisly fate of his beloved wife Sarah. Now before we begin, just a quick reminder that if you like the video, please remember to throw up a like and hit that subscribe button as it really helps the channel grow. And with that, let's get into the first reason you need to play Days Gone, and that is because the world in which this game is set is just drop dead beautiful. I mean, just look at this scene. It's ridiculous. When I first booted up Days Gone, I was struck by just how believable a world the talented people at Bend Studio have managed to create in their digitized version of Farewell Oregon where the game is set. There's a satisfying weight to literally everything, from the evergreens edging the road to the wolves that relentlessly chase you down said road. And the terrain is just incredibly varied. The game starts out in the lush forested Cascade region, but there's also desert areas, snowy peaks, and even some places where the landscape has been completely scorched bare of life to stop freakers from creeping up on survivor enclaves. Each biome has its own distinctive feel and beauty, and each feels completely different depending on the weather and the time of day. At any moment, you could be riding through the relatively brightly lit forest on your way to an objective, only to see the weather abruptly change into a dramatic storm. Suddenly, the once borderline cheerful environment radiates threat from literally every direction. It's an impressive feat, and to successfully ingrain that level of detail and realism into so many different environments that all seamlessly populate the same open world map is just testament to the skill of the developers at Bend Studios. But it isn't just an empty, beautifully realized showcase of a digital world. It's positively teeming with life, and a whole lot of that life would love nothing more than to steal your bike and rip your face off. So let's get into the eclectic cast of bad-tempered creatures that Deacon has to negotiate with over the course of his harrowing adventure. First up, you got your human survivors, and spoilers, they're not all friendly. The bad ones come in 3 basic factions. You got your marauders, which are your run-of-the-mill bad guys who want to kill you and take everything that you own. Rippers, or members of the Rest in Peace cult, who worship the freakers and want to be just like them. And finally, Nero, or the National Emergency Response Organization, a shadowy group that only seem interested in tracking the progress of the infection that created the mutants that now rule the wilds. And then you've got the freakers themselves. These are the unfortunate vestiges of humanity who are infected by an unknown plague en masse, and are now regressing into a bestial existence, but also evolving further beyond that. As their name implies, the basic freaker, which is known as a swarmer, usually operates in a group ranging from a couple of these smelly kimasabes up to hordes of sweaty idiots hundreds strong. But those aren't the only mutants in the game. There are also special freakers who have mutated even further. Screamers have the ability to call down a group of basic freakers on Deacon, while Reachers are stronger and faster than normal swarmers and can take a lot more damage. Breakers, meanwhile, are essentially roided up tanks with anger management issues. But all of these ex-humans and still human douchebags aren't just after Deacon alone, they also have it out for each other. The developers of Days Gone created their own little ecosystem in the game, which the creative director and writer for the game at Bend Studios, John Garvin, once affectionately described as the Freakosystem. And here's a little sample of how that Freakosystem can work. Marauders and Rippers will attack each other and literally everything else. Swarmers, meanwhile, are basically cool with other Swarmers, Screamers, and Reachers, but for reasons, will immediately try to angry murder any humans or breakers that they meet. Hordes, meanwhile, sit at the apex of that food chain and basically roll over whatever annoys them with a horrifying single-mindedness that still leaves me cold when I see it to this day, despite the fact that I have taken down multiple Hordes and I am a coward, so I am proud of that achievement. And don't even get me started on the mutant animals. There's a type of bear in this game called the Rager, which has managed to make the transition from in-game world to my nightmares on a regular basis. So well done Bend Studio for that. The sheer variety of enemies that you come across in this game, combined with their varying unpredictable nature and the amazing sound design throughout, means that you never truly feel safe and comfortable while you're exploring scenic Oregon. And isn't that exactly how it would be in an actual post-apocalyptic world populated by mutants and very, very bad men? So again, it's all very believable. Now let's change gears for a second, pun intended, and talk about Deacon's drifter bike, because ever since I platinumed this game, that metal horse has literally never been far from my mind. And that's despite the fact that, like many people, I do not own or know how to ride a motorbike in the real, and I do not belong to a motorcycle gang as of yet. That said, I also don't live in a post-apocalyptic zombie-riven hellscape, but if 2021 decides to try and fully outdo 2020, that could easily be a reality in the near future. And if I am forced to become a biker slash mercenary for hire, I hope that my bike is the exact same bike that I had in Days Gone, because I freaking love that thing. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that the Drifter bike is as much a companion to Deacon St. John as the Jackdaw is to Edward Conway in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and that is just about the highest compliment that you can pay to a non-corporeal motorcycle. In terms of gameplay, it is, in its most basic form, a means of badass transportation, but when you first get the Drifter bike in the game, it looks like a pile of beautifully rendered beaten up trash, and, spoilers, it will also drive as such. In the first few hours, you will initially hit everything in sight as you systematically overturn and underturn and inevitably run into trees, zombies, and everything else coded into that beautifully realized Oregon landscape. But after a few more hours in the saddle, you'll realize that, hey, you're getting pretty damn good with this thing. Cut to another 10 hours, and the bike is just going to be an extension of Deacon's own body, as he deftly weaves through the forest and navigates the roads of broken down America. And that's because the bike evolves along with Deacon as you progress through the game. This is down to a combination of the player becoming more skillful at handling the two-wheeled metal stallion, and that very same said player taking the time to improve the bike by visiting garages and purchasing upgrades, and also buffing St. John's abilities by progressing through the plentiful skill tree. These upgrades allow you to improve the handling and toughness of the bike as well as its carrying capacity. You can also install nitrous tanks that give Deacon an extra boost of speed, which is both vital in making a timely escape and for reaching areas of the map that would otherwise be cut off to you. You can also heavily customize the look of your bike through aesthetic upgrades and paint jobs, so feel free to let your personality shine through, or if you're anything like me, just use the Death Stranding promotional components, because my personality can essentially be boiled down to thinking about Death Stranding and then playing Death Stranding. But it's important to remember that your drifter bike isn't invincible and that it doesn't run on rainbows and good intentions. Smash into an obstacle too hard, and yes, that does include living obstacles, and your bike is going to start taking damage. Thankfully, Deacon can fix up any prangs using scrap, which can be found throughout the open world, often under the bonnets of abandoned cars, hidden away in dilapidated buildings, and even on the corpses of fallen enemies. You also have to be on constant lookout for the telltale red of fuel canisters and gas stations, as one of the worst scenarios that St. John can find himself in is being dead out of fuel in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by creatures that, again, want to eat his face. Next up on our list is combat, because if a problem in Days Gone can't be solved by riding towards or away from it as quickly as humanly possible, then it probably can be solved by the friendly application of bullets, knives, and explosives. The good folks at Bend Studio have done an amazing job in implementing combat into the game in a way that allows the player a huge amount of flexibility in how they take down a group of enemies. At the outset, Deacon's offensive options are fairly limited, but as you progress through the game and improve your standing with survivor enclaves, St. John gains access to an armory of weaponry and tools impressive enough to make Rambo fill his pants. But just because you've got the guns doesn't necessarily mean that you should use them. The more cautious player can opt to approach with stealth, which is particularly useful when wiping out a group of human enemies. Simply lure an unsuspecting guardsman towards you with a rock and then introduce him to your friendly boot knife or perhaps a well-placed crossbow bolt. Alternatively, you could turn targets against their comrades using bolts laced with residue found in freaker nests. Of course, taking down groups of enemies often requires finesse and a whole lot of ammunition. This is where the survival wheel becomes your new best friend. Activating the survival wheel with the left bumper briefly triggers a slow motion state and allows St. John to switch between equipped weapons and craft new items on the fly, assuming that you've collected the correct ingredients. It also lets you use scrap to repair melee weapons, each of which has a damage meter of its own. So good news there, Breath of the Wild fans. But if stealth isn't your deal, you could always go in guns blazing and baseball batter swinging until Deacon St. John is the only anger haver left standing. But if you do choose to use this tactic, always be aware where your bike is and where your escape routes are, because the sound of your aggressive negotiations could end up bringing a horde down on both the enemy camp and yourself. And on that note, a completely different set of tactics and equipment is needed when you're dealing with these poorly bathed hives of former humanity. And that brings us nicely to point 5 on our list. Hordes are, without question, the most technically impressive and innovative mechanic implemented by the talented team over at Bend Studio. A grand total of 40 Hordes infest the map on Days Gone, and they can range between 50 to 500 swarmers in strength. Now, it will be terrifying enough to know that these armies of infected are just out there, statically waiting for Deacon to unwittingly disturb them as he goes about his bloody business. And they are. But they also exhibit dynamic behaviors that has them travel en masse from their hibernation spots depending on the time of day and even the weather. Usually, when the sun is shining, the Hordes will hide themselves away, hibernating until night when they become more active and emerge from their caves and derelict buildings to feed, drink, and hunt. They also get stronger when the sun goes down, or even during the day when it's raining or snowing. There is nothing more terrifying than thinking you're taking some pot shots at a lone group of freakers and then seeing hundreds of them seethe out of the woodland towards you. In fact, here's John Garvey laying out exactly what he wanted players to feel when fighting these hives of mutated humanity. When players are fighting the Horde, the emotions I want them to constantly have are a range of different emotions from, oh my god, I'm completely overwhelmed, this is impossible, to, I think I can do this, to, I got this, to, oh no, I don't got this, to, oh holy crap, I'm in trouble, and oh my god. And then from there it can be, oh my god, I totally pulled it off, or, oh my god, that last guy killed me. And as a Days Gone player, this is no longer John Garvey speaking, I have felt every single one of those hecking emotions multiple times, and I hate-loved it every single time. Now, if you do come across a Horde randomly in the world, the best thing you could do is get on your bike and book it the hell out of there, because actually killing a Horde requires a lot of nerve and careful planning. First up, be sure to scout the area, and bring fast-firing, high-penetration, crowd-control weapons with you. You'll also want to stack up on explosives, molotovs, and other traps and items. While you're surveying the area, be on the lookout for explosive barrels and tankers, which will inevitably be covered red, where you can lay traps to maximum effect, and then try and channel that sea of freakers into narrow choke points where their numbers impede their movement, and where you can make the most of your rapid-fire weapons. Later on in the game, you get access to noise attractor bombs attached to a proximity device, and a more powerful version of the Molotov, which makes Horde management a whole lot easier. But it's always a tough and phenomenally exciting prospect to try and take these Hordes out. But killing Hordes isn't the be-all and end-all of Days Gone, because there's just so much to do in this game. Along with the missions designed to advance the endearing and engaging main narrative, there's also a host of collectibles to find and a ton of side stories to complete. These narrative threads come with their own rewards and do a great job of introducing you to the cast of NPC characters that bring the human element into Days Gone. The vast majority of these side missions start off in one of the main survivor camps spread throughout the open world map. Alongside picking up missions in these locations, it's also worth taking the time to improve your relationships with these enclaves, as this will give you access to better guns and impressive new bike parts moving forwards. There are also historical landmarks spread throughout the world for you to find, along with abandoned Nero checkpoints and helicopter crash sites. Now, these should be a high priority for your Deacon, as once you've restored power to the installations by fueling up the on-site generators, you'll be able to use them as base camps in which to sleep, progress time, and change your loadout. Each site also contains a Nero injector, which will allow you to improve your health, stamina, or focus, which essentially allows Deacon to briefly enter a state of slow motion while aiming his ranged weapon. In these locations, you'll also find audio recordings that help reveal what happened at the site during the early days of the infection, so they become pivotal points in understanding the meta-story of Days Gone that isn't necessarily laid out in the narrative. If you're looking to take out a group of freakers but don't want the stress of taking on a massive horde, you could go hunting through the Oregon countryside for freaker nests. Simply huck a Molotov at one and every freaker inside will burst out looking for blood. You'll need to clear out these infestations in order to unlock fast travel routes and also to get your hands on freaker residue, which is needed to craft special ammunition. Obviously that isn't everything to do in Days Gone, but you get the impression. There's a whole lot of fun to be had in that post-apocalyptic America. And to make things even better, there's literally never been a better time to jump in. In November last year, the game received a patch that allowed it to run at 60 frames per second with dynamic 4K resolution on the PlayStation 5. And as literally everyone knows, higher frame rates and improved graphical fidelity means better zombie killing times. And that's it for our list of 7 reasons you should jump into Days Gone on the PlayStation 5. Let me know what you think about the game in the comments section, along with which features you're hoping to see implemented in a potential sequel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to throw up a like and hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for future content.